All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Brandy Alderson. I am a part of SHAPE, and this is our SHAPE Homeschool High School 201 event. This event is for any homeschooling parents who are currently homeschooling high school or who are considering homeschooling in high school. Just a little bit about myself. I started attending the 201 events when my kids were in middle school because I was deathly afraid of going into the high school years. So regardless of the age of your children now, the information is relevant as you move forward, and also encouragement. That's always some of the most important aspects. So I will just give a rundown of the wonderful people who are joining us today. We're going to hear from Mrs. Margie Abbitt. She is a HomeLife Academy counselor. No doubt most of us probably have HomeLife as our umbrella school. So we look forward to having Miss Margie encourage us and kind of help us and lead us through just even if we're thinking about homeschooling high school. Also, Ronda Williams with Columbia State Community College. She was with us last year, and she's helped quite a few of us homeschooling parents with dual enrollment and also steps in achieving that. We also have Michael, and I am not going to murder that last name. I'm going to let you say it when you come on. And many of you may know that Michael was with Columbia State when he would join us for 201s. He is now with Nashville State Community College, which I'm an alumni with. So I'm very excited because it just continues to give us options and offerings as we look to see what our children may want to do beyond high school. So a few of our veteran parents: Robin Otts Parker, who has graduated 2 children. She'll be speaking with us on resources, encouragement, her experience. Tara Ebert, she will discuss ACT accommodations, having current high schoolers. She has a daughter who's in college for nursing, and most of you, I'm sure, know probably all of our panelists, but definitely know Tara. So she's always got good stuff to offer. And then we will also have, okay, yes, there she is, Lisa Russell, who is a homeschool graduate. She is a parent who is a homeschool graduate, and she's currently homeschooling her children. So I am excited for everyone who has graciously volunteered their time, because that is definitely one of the most precious commodities is our time. So a few housekeeping rules. We would love for you to have your video on if possible. Xavier is my son. He is one of the co-hosts. So if he needs to mute you or anything like that, he's in behind the scenes helping out. If you're familiar with Zoom, please feel free. You can add any questions that you may have in the chat. So I believe most of it is at the bottom of your screen. You can click on that chat button and you can put any questions that you have with any other speakers that are coming up, and then I'll get those questions. And whether it is during their presentation or most definitely after everyone has spoken, we will answer, or definitely make the attempt to answer all questions, because we definitely want this to be an interactive event. So with that being said, I think I've covered everything. If there's anything I haven't covered, please speak up, or for the moment, hold your peace. All right, I think we're good to go. Okay, so our first speaker to get us started this morning, we're going to invite Miss Margie Abbitt. Xavier, however you work that when Miss Margie starts speaking, if you could pin her, please. And we will let her encourage us and pour into us, and just do what you do best, Miss Margie. So feel free to go ahead.
Well, as we get started, I was kind of chuckling, thinking, most of us that if you're getting ready to start homeschooling, you're probably feeling like we do on Zoom right now. I know Brandy was like, this is a new thing, and am I doing this right? So I'm going to try to share my screen and we'll see if it works. But, sometimes you try stuff and you got to try something else. And that's kind of the way homeschooling is that you can start. So we're going to see. The host has disabled my screen sharing ability, so maybe that'll change in a minute and I will be able to share that. But Brandy asked me to talk about how to succeed in homeschooling high school, and I got to thinking about, I was just trying to, okay, what's, I've shared things like this a lot, what could be different? And I went to a workshop that I had used before that was called How to Survive High School. And when I opened it up, I realized the second part of that title was, and enjoy the journey. And I really felt like that was the message that God really has today, is for us to enjoy the journey. And it was the biggest thing that made our homeschool successful, was being able to enjoy the journey. I'm gonna look in here now and see if it's gonna let me go into this, and it probably will come in at the wrong place, but let me just see if I can share my screen. And I might have to back up just a little bit. Okay, let's back up. We're gonna enjoy the journey here just a little bit. Can I get it to get me? Sorry guys, I am pretending like I'm new to homeschooling and it's not giving me the screen to go full screen. So anyway, we may have to play with this a little bit, but this is where I want it to be. There's usually, oh, there it is. There's the little button I need. Okay, we're good. All right. So how to survive high school and enjoy the journey. As I was going through this, I realized that we really need to focus on the enjoy part more than I am surviving part. We need to focus on what matters. And, and this is hard because lots of times when we are going through and getting ready to homeschool, our mind looks a little bit like this. We've got a lot of questions. Yes, maybe, never. We're confused. I talk to parents every day that are coming into homeschooling or just facing high school. They think, man, I've homeschooled a long time, but I got to high school and I said, maybe we should just jump ship because this is going to be way too hard. And it really isn't so hard. You may have felt a little bit like this. And so you may want to do that. But there's an old saying called, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. So sometimes we get so focused on the planning and the logistics of it, which is good. We want to have that. And if you need help with that, you call HomeLife. We have a full counseling staff. We have high school planning sheets. We have all these different things that can assist you in the logistics of homeschooling. But what we really need to focus on is, and I loved this little thing, it says to follow one course until you're successful. And so it doesn't mean that you won't have to test some of these other waters, but when you get focused on what's really important with homeschooling, we can get real bogged down by what kind of diploma. Are they going to get a standard diploma, a modified diploma, a certificate of completion? What's their college path? Are they going to go to 4 years of college? Are they going to have a 2-year plan? Are they going to do life choice? Where are these? I mean, parents get really, we have things on our website like this that tell you all of that. They tell you exactly what you're going to need to graduate. They tell you, we help you with that planning. I'm going backwards, guys. I apologize. Some courses they can take in high school are non-textbook courses. So sometimes parents are really concerned they're not going to get credit for certain things they're doing, and we can help you through all that logistics. We make these plans with a pencil, not a pen. And we work through, we help you with exceptional children. We help you with kids with challenges. But the big thing is to figure out what your main focus is when you're going through high school. We all have those wonderful gifted children. All of our children are gifted in some way. Some kids are going to have to go deeper than faster because they're so smart, they're absorbing all the curriculum. Others, you're going to need to slow it down and do a lot more unit stays, but you get to do all of that with homeschooling. High school, there is not like one specific way to do high school. There's not. I tell people I had 6 children, none of their transcripts looked the same. All of them were something different. We have an advanced track for 8th graders. You can do dual enrollment. I'm sure the other people from the state colleges are going to explain that more. Some kids graduate in 3 years instead of 4. Some take 5 years. We help you develop your transcript. We do all the logistics part of it for. That's not the hard part. We help you develop portfolios with the kids, and we will help you with job applications and FAFSA. And like I said, some kids do a 5-year plan. But I have to stop right here at this picture, because I wonder if anybody who's had a kid in public school might feel this more. I had this picture for years, but right now it says, what's the distance between teaching and your students learning? And I had to stop and laugh, because this is probably really what's happening out there in the real world today, is that there is a big distance. A lot of parents are coming to homeschooling now because there is this big gap between what's actually, what people are trying to do with teaching and what's actually being learned, and they're realizing their kids aren't learning. And so when I looked at my children, I had to realize I didn't care how they learned, I cared that they were learning. And that looks very different. Most of us were public school trained. We thought school was reading a book, taking a test. But that's not what school is all about. That's not what learning is all about. It's figuring out how that child learns best. And that is one of the advantages of homeschooling. Even through high school, we get to figure out how does that child learn best. I know Tara's probably going to touch a little bit, probably can't talk without talking about dyslexia. We had a daughter that was dyslexic, and she didn't comprehend much of anything unless she could hear it too. She needed to hear it. And but she heard it. She knew every bit about it. So it'd been very unfair to go, well, we're just only going to grade you on whether you can read a book and take a test well, because it wasn't that she couldn't learn. She needed it served the way she learned it. And she needed something that would take it all the way across the gap, So I think as I'm starting this out now, I think I want you to think about what your expectations are. What is your expectations for your kids? Don't compare your kids to other people. Your kid's not going to learn like the other people. Lots of people come to me and they'll say, well, I'm just not a teacher, and I just need that really strict, rigorous program, even though I've got an ADHD, dyslexic, dysgraphic child. And I'll go, don't do that, because then that child may not learn that way. My mama used to always say she was not a teacher. All my life, she'd say, oh, I can't teach. I'm not a teacher. And then later on, actually, when she went to be with the Lord, he showed me, this woman taught me stuff all day long, because there's a lot of things you're going to teach your children going through high school that's going to get them ready to be an adult. Most of us can look back and we may not remember a lot about the textbooks, and maybe sometimes that's not what's really going to change our life. What's really going to change our life is the things that maybe didn't come out of a textbook. So a lot of times when I'm looking at parents, and I'll say, the main thing that I felt like I accomplished after 30 years of homeschooling, 6 kids that were very different, is that we figured out how to teach them to love to learn. If we didn't see their light bulbs coming on, if we didn't see them excited, if we weren't having fun, I actually believe kids learn more if they're having fun. If you're not having fun, you're probably not learning, because you remember what you have enjoyed. If you've ever been to a really boring thing, which I hope that's not what this is today, and you get bored, then you probably aren't going to retain a lot of that information. But a lot of times we compare ourselves to the person over there whose kid's able to, make all A's in a read and take test booklet, and they think, oh, my kids aren't measuring it. But that's not, we want to look for those golden spots. We want to put that focus on what the child is really good at, and then build their curriculum, build their life around, because the biggest thing that they can walk away from your homeschool with is a love for learning. You will never teach them everything, but if you teach them to love to learn, they will learn the rest of their life. And we have watched this happen with our children. It has been amazing, the stuff they'll come back and say, oh, I researched that. I found out how to do that. I took that class and passed that certification. They thrived because they loved to learn. They were hungry to learn, and they knew how they learned. That was very, very special. So don't compare your kid to anyone else. There is no perfect magical path to get out of high school. There's a path that's perfect for your child, and we can help you find that. Some kids are not college bound. Some are going to be very much needed out in a and maybe want to go to a technical school or to somewhere to get that training to do that. Some will just do apprenticeships. There's a lot of different options there to do that. As I was thinking about my mom and what she taught me, I think one of the biggest things that she taught me and said about raising children is she said, follow your heart. Follow your heart. She said, if I didn't feel good about you doing it, then you didn't do it. And I would say in the years of homeschooling, I didn't have anybody to call and say, hey, I'd like to do, what do you think about this? That I had to follow my heart. And so sometimes I didn't do things just like everybody else because my heart said that wasn't right for my child. And that's okay. That's really all right. I think the beauty of homeschooling is the freedom and the flexibility to focus on what your student is gifted at, what God's given them, and allow them to grow and mature and build that high school experience around that. And I think you're going to hear some of the other mothers explain how that happened in their house. And so hope y'all enjoy the rest of the seminar.
Okay, Miss Margie, if you can, let's see. Yep, perfect. And EXO, thank you. All righty, so let me do that. Now, if you have any questions for Miss Margie or as we go along, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll make sure that we get those answered. I'm actually trying to get my, I'm sorry, hold on one second. Let me get that out of the way. Okay, so we will continue. Thank you, Miss Margie. I appreciate most definitely when you shared the screen with the pictures about how to not comparing and also that every child is different. I am definitely experiencing that in this season. I have a Xavier who's helping co-hosting today. He's graduating. He's a 2021 graduate. So he is my first graduating child that I have homeschooled. I honestly can't believe I'm saying that out loud because I was so deathly afraid when I pulled them out. Yeah, so I'm excited. And then Carmaine, who is in the 10th grade, I had them taking small group classes. And I thought that this is my way. This is how it's going to be. Somebody's going to help me with these high school classes and I can just kind of buffer the extras, Well, Carmaine is the child that she couldn't do it. Year 2, anxiety hit, couldn't be in the classroom or couldn't be in the small groups. And she was like, I need you one-on-one. Okay. So here I am trying to do crash course chemistry and geometry. Lord help us all. So she's a small group dropout right now. So we got to hit it hard in January. All right. So with that all being said, enough about me. Next we have Miss Ronda Williams.
Hello, I'm sorry, I had to close my door because people are just moving left and right today. Apparently it's the day where people want to move out of my apartment complex, but I closed the balcony door, which I was behind to prevent some of the sunlight. So I am happy to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint.
Okay. But then you go ahead and get started. Miss Ronda Williams is with Columbia State and I'll let her go for it.
All right, first I want to say, Xavier, congratulations on graduating. This cannot be an easy year for any of us, but I feel exceptionally bad for students who are going through the pandemic and having to figure out what they want to do with the rest of their life, because that is just so difficult and complicated with so many unknowns. But congratulations, because you certainly should be honored for making it to your senior year. And I'm hopefully you're enjoying that senior year. But my name is Ronda Williams. I am an enrollment recruiter at Columbia State. I've been with the college now for 6 years. I am also an instructor at the college. I teach classes in college success, which is our entry-level college class for all of our first-time freshmen. And I also am teaching in the School of Communication. In the fall semesters, I teach Intro to Communications, which is our fundamental communication class. basically our speech class, and then I teach argument and debate in the spring. So certainly, definitely looking at things from both an academic perspective on the student services side, but also too on the faculty side, and doing some help with the academic advising as well. But some brief things about the college, because most of you probably are very familiar with some of the things about Columbia State. We were founded in 1966 as the first community college here in the state of Tennessee. We do currently have 5 campus locations with over 6,000 students and more than 70 different areas of majors of studies that students have. Our campus locations include, and I put them there from largest to smallest, our Columbia campus, which is closely followed up by our Williamson Franklin campus, which Michael knows all too well, is our growing, rapidly growing campus. Just recently we did, I think the last building or the last facility that we opened there was our parking garage, which was much needed. So just as we opened our parking garage, we went off campus. So it seems like that was just God's way of laughing at us. But we also do offer our campuses in Lawrenceburg, Lewisburg, and Clifton. And I am technically the recruiter for Murray and Marshall County. So I do spend most of my time in Columbia and that Lewisburg campus. We do offer 3 virtual options, and that is what we are doing currently. And that is what we will be moving to for the spring as well. That announcement had been made a couple of months ago that we will be virtual as well for the spring. But we do offer Tennessee eCampus, Columbia State Online, and DVC/Zoom classes. Difference between the Tennessee eCampus and the Columbia State Online is that the Tennessee eCampus classes are taught through statewide. So that can be any faculty member from any state institution. Doesn't have to be from Columbia State. It could be from MTSU. We have a lot of teachers who are professors from Ball State and other colleges across the state. However, our Columbia State Online is taught by Columbia State faculty members. For most students, it doesn't make a huge difference. For our dual enrollment students, we do encourage them to do the Tennessee eCampus class because those Tennessee eCampus do not have an additional fee that comes with that course, whereas our Columbia State Online classes do have an additional fee. And then also to DVZ Zoom, most of our classes are being offered through that method. It used to be called DVC. We've moved down now completely to the Zoom method. And so this was our first semester fully teaching on Zoom. As a speech teacher, I will tell you, this has been such a challenging semester. Zoom has been very difficult. I am a touchy-feely type of professor where I like to get to know my students. In speech class, I guess you don't think of it as much as a sharing class, but a lot of times students are doing intimate speeches about things that have happened and occurred within their life. So it's very difficult to kind of get to know the class, for them to open up to each other, to be able to share those. So I'm hearing a lot more superficial speeches nowadays, a lot more legalization of marijuana speeches, a lot more of the speeches that are just your run-of-the-mill speeches instead of those ones that really that allow me to know my students the best. I will also say, as a professor, I miss the chatter. I never thought I would say I miss the chatter, but I miss coming into the classroom and hearing the students communicate together, because I forgot how much I realized that lets me know them. Just hearing the general conversations that they have. So Zoom has been definitely, from a faculty standpoint, challenging, but I can say Columbia State has taken great efforts to make sure that we have decided to go online early, so that way our faculty can do the best job possible of making sure that our Zoom methodology is as up to date as possible, and then making sure that it is also as user-friendly to our students and as personal to our students as in person. We do have some small classes that are in person. Our EMT courses, of course, have to be because of on-site training. Some of our nursing labs have to be on campus because they are doing their rotations throughout the hospital. So there are current classes that our vet tech students are still on campus that are still there. But for the majority of us, we are living in this virtual space. We do offer both career entry and Tennessee transfer pathway programs. The majority of our students are going to go through our Tennessee transfer pathways, and they're going to obtain an associate's degree. The majority of our students receive an associate of science because they don't want to take 2 semesters of a foreign language to do the associate of arts. So a lot of our students are completing the associate of science. The university transfer pathways just means that students are selecting degrees that will automatically filter into the 4-year institution that also offer that degree. So if I have a student who wants to do sociology ultimately at MTSU, they can do an associate of science through a TTP or university transfer, Tennessee transfer pathway at Columbia State, and take their first 2 years in that sociology program through Columbia State and automatically be a junior when they go into MTSU because they've already taken the 2-year prereq. So that's kind of all the difference between those TTPs. Then our career entry programs, most of our health science ones are career entry programs. We do have mechatronics and some other ones that are career entry. Those are going to be certificate programs or associate of applied sciences. And again, those degrees are meant for students to go directly into the workforce. I do always want to make a side note that our health science programs usually are our most competitive programs. Those are our nursing program, respiratory care, radiology tech, EMT program now has been on a wait for multiple years. So that's becoming a little bit more of a competitive program. Those require a separate admission process. So a lot of times students are coming to Columbia State to do pre-allied health nursing, which means they're not in the nursing program yet. They're taking prerequisites to get into that program. So some of our programs may require a separate admissions process. So that's always something I like to tell students, and their advisors will help them navigate that process once they become a student at Columbia State. Small fun stuff. I don't even know how our athletes are even doing it nowadays, but they are still playing games here and there. They are still practicing. We have 5 athletic sports teams. We have softball, baseball, men and women's basketball, and our latest sport that we offered 2 years ago that was offered is our women's soccer team. They've already gone to a championship, and they were off to such a great start, and then the pandemic hit. They are currently in season, playing as many games as they possibly can, as safe as possible. Those athletic teams are housed at the Columbia campus. We do have over 50 clubs and organizations. I'm actually involved in one of our clubs and organizations. I am actually an advisor for one of our clubs and organizations. We offer free tutoring. Right now, we're doing our tutoring online. That has actually been really great for our students. I was a part of a focus group where I could ask students how they are getting adjusted to this online learning. And a lot of the students during their college success class actually said the tutoring has been fine, that they've been getting free tutoring, and that's been working via Zoom for them in the virtual space. We also offer TRIO academic support for our students who are first generation college students. This is a federally funded program that we have been so proud to hold our grant for. We received our TRIO grant again for an additional 5 years, in addition to receiving 2 other smaller grants through TRIO. So that's just another support for our students. And we do have an on-site counselor at both our Columbia campus and our Williamson County campus, but that is always available for our students that may need that throughout the semester. For our dual enrollment program, so students can join the dual enrollment program actually anytime as during their freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior year. However, if they are under their junior year, they do need special permission. That is considered our academically gifted and talented students. We used to require them to have an IEP. We no longer require that. They just need permission from the umbrella school. But juniors and seniors can take our dual enrollment program, which is taking college credit while they're still in high school. Eligibility for the first class and the first dual enrollment grant, which I'll talk a little bit about the next slide, is nothing. Students can have actually any high school GPA, which is kind of scary, but they can have any high school GPA to actually participate in the dual enrollment for their first class and to get their first grant. However, for continuation in the dual enrollment grant, to receive that grant, they have to have a 2.75. And for the dual enrollment continuation program at Columbia State, they have to maintain a 2.0. So I always tell dual enrollment students, please remember, getting a C will actually make you lose your grant. because the C is not a 3.0. And so unless you're taking just one class, you're going to need higher than a C in that first class. So I always just stress to students that really in the dual enrollment program that is meant for more accelerated students, we are expecting them to get A's and B's in those courses to maintain that dual enrollment grant eligibility. So the grant is the complicated thing that the state has made even more complicated that I am not going to complicate further. I will just say that the grant, you can apply once and it will go for a full academic year. However, we have still had to go out there and put when the deadline dates are, because we have some students who won't take fall grants, so they won't apply, and they'll take spring grants. There's the dog, but they'll take spring grants. So we do have, she's found another window to bark out of. So we do have different timelines. So for fall, September 15th is the deadline to think about. For spring, February 1st is that deadline to think about. And for summer, May 15th is that date to think about. So if your student is applying for that dual enrollment grant for fall, they can apply for one application and they can make it for fall, spring, and summer. So that keeps it a little bit simple. But to complicate things, this year, your students can now be eligible for 3 courses per semester. But for your homeschool students, they have to be Hope eligible, which makes it even more complicated because that means they have to have that 21 ACT. And I know I just heard they just canceled that upcoming December ACT for a lot of students. So, you know, our homeschool students, for the high school students who are public high school, they can have a 3.0 or a 21 ACT. So this time hasn't been that challenging for them. But for homeschool students, most of your students haven't possibly been able to take the test. I know September, I think most of our high school students were finally able to take that test. But I have contacted the state and they are unable, and they can't even see a time where they would take that 21 off for the Hope requirement for dual enrollment or for Hope, because that would require legislation. And so to get that on the books is probably going to take longer than what they hope the pandemic lasts. So unfortunately for homeschool students, in order to get more than one grant per semester, they still have to have that 21 ACT composite score. For your grant amount, students can, for the first course, get $500, second course $500, third course is $200, fourth course the parent pays for. Anything from the 5th through the 10th course taps into their Hope. And usually when students get that far, I like to have a conversation with them and their parents, and we can just talk about what their plans are after graduation of high school. If they're planning to go to a out-of-state school, then tap the Hope, get all your state money you can because you're leaving the state anyway. But if you're planning on going to a state school, then that is going to pull from your funds when you go to that other state school. So that's the conversation we can have. My homeschool students Michael can probably attest to this, are always usually taking those are my students that are taking those grants 5 through 10. So if you see yourself being one of those parents, then we can have that conversation once your student is at that point. For a DE application, you just need a transcript. It doesn't have to be the full one. It could be the half semester one. The DE consent form, which they can get on our website, has to be signed by the umbrella school and the parent. Hep B form or your immunization record, that Hep B form can be found on our website as well. ACT score, if they don't have it, they can take the placement test, or in order to get into most classes, they can also have a 3.6 GPA. So that is also new as of last year because of the pandemic. So they can have a 3.6 GPA in order to get into most of our college level classes. They also need to reapply as a first-time freshman if they are a dual enrollment student. So if they do plan to come to Columbia State once they leave the college as a dual enrollment student and apply, they would have to reapply to us as a first-time freshman. Our upcoming deadlines for our spring students, last day to apply is the 8th. Classes begin the 19th. Summer classes begin the 24th for that first summer session, but we do run 3 sessions. And for our fall, we have not put out that calendar yet, but typically mid-August is our deadline to apply. And classes typically begin, last year they began August 24th, so it's usually during the end of August. I did not mention any financial aid information on purpose. I am not going to get into the Tennessee Promise. There has been so much back and forth as far as what the deadlines are for Tennessee Promise, what the requirements are for Tennessee Promise. At one point, we heard they did have to do community service. Then we heard they didn't have to do it. Then we heard they did have to do it. Then the deadline to apply has changed to December 1st. I just didn't feel comfortable putting in a PowerPoint slide what those requirements were because I didn't want to be held to that standard for somebody to say, hey, Ronda Williams from Columbia State, whose phone number said, this is the deadline. So what I am going to encourage you to do is for any of the state aid, please visit the state website. You know, I always Google Tennessee Promise. It'll be the first site that comes up. They should have the up to most late datest information on what students are going to have to do. I know for homeschool students, because you do not have a counselor, you have to stay more vigilant than you ever had to stay vigilant before, because I am often not even aware of what those timelines and those timeframes are. So please just make sure that you're following those websites. You should have a mentor. If you do not, then there is somebody for the state. Our representative in this area is Annie Trout. And I can get you her contact information if you needed it. She's a great resource to let you know what's the latest and greatest coming down from the state as far as when the deadline is available. We do have private scholarships for our students. Those are limited. That deadline is typically February 1st. I also didn't put that in the slide because I can see that we're probably going to change that as well. So for finances, for personal questions, please feel free to email me or give me a call. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. Thank you, Rhonda. A quick question, just for clarification. When you had mentioned with the homeschool student, the Hope Scholarship, you said that they have to have the ACT, they have to have both a 21 on the ACT, and what was that other?
They can only have the 21 composite ACT. So they don't have the option to have both, no.
Wow. And so and the difference between that and a public school student is that public school is either a 21 or a, what was the GPA?
3.0.
A 3.0. Wow. Okay.
And I've asked that question from the state. It has been, you know, it's totally unfair. It is completely unfair. Now, the 3.6 GPA, that can be for homeschool or that can be for public school students. That's to get them out of the learning support classes if they don't have the ACT. But that is not the same as the Hope Scholarship or to get more than one grant in a semester.
Okay. All right, thank you.
That's sorry for that point of confusion. Yeah, it's a little bit confusing, but hopefully your students were able to take it in September, but I have heard already that a lot of the December dates have already canceled. I've had several students tell me that who are homeschool students.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, once again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat so that we can get those answered. Let's see, Katie, how does a student without an umbrella school get early dual enrollment? Rhonda, is that something that you can answer?
It is. It's something I'm probably going to have to defer to Jolene, who is our guru in our office, because I've actually not had that question come up before. Unless, Michael, do you actually know that answer?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand it though. And hi, Rhonda, by the way, good to see you again. It's good to hook up with old
so
colleagues.
much. Oh God, sorry. I fangirled over Michael. I'm so sorry. I missed him more than you could ever understand. I miss you, Michael.
Well, let me go ahead and defer to Michael and introduce him, and then he can answer, and then he can start if that's okay. Michael is our next speaker. He's with Nashville State Community College. Also in the chat, there are 3 documents that he asked me to share. So we will also send these documents out in email, but I did want to put them in the chat. Now I do understand if you're on your computer, you should be able to save those documents. If you're unable to do so before we disconnect, I will be more than happy to get you all's email address and make sure that I forward that information to you. So I just want to put that out there. But Michael, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you if that's okay. And thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Brandy. And with that one question, I believe like if you're not going through an umbrella, you're just homeschooling through the state, if I understand that correctly, you can dual enroll. And I believe it would be the same with either institution, whether it's Columbia State or Nashville State. Still have to provide a transcript. And I believe that transcript would, just come from, you do have to report grades to the state, if I'm not mistaken, but it could be your transcript in that situation. And there's paperwork, whether it's Columbia State, Nashville State, where umbrella school would sign off. In that situation, the parent could sign off there. So it is possible, certainly, if you don't go through a specific umbrella. It's just a little different, but it's still a possibility with any of the state community colleges. Okay. But with that, I guess I'll just introduce myself, Michael Sztapka. It's good to be back again. It's good to see some familiar faces. Good to see Ronda always. Appreciate you guys having me. Appreciate you guys going with the Zoom meeting too, with the way things are going. And a lot of the information that I'll have very similar to what Miss Ronda said. I mean, she's wise to stay away from the financial aid and the grant explanation because it is complicated. But just telling a little bit about the options with Nashville State for homeschool families and their perspectives, dual enrollment, which is what I do primarily with Nashville State. It's what I did with Columbia State for many years. That's an option for you. And geographically, certainly we're not as close as Columbia State. Columbia State's got the Columbia campus down there. Of course, the Williamson campus up in Franklin. We're a little bit further away geographically, but in this age of the pandemic, we've learned to go and adjust to a lot of virtual and online instructions. So maybe there's some other options here for your students to consider. We do have a campus in Dixon. I'm kind of guesstimating the service area, but Dixon is over at the Renaissance Center. So Nashville State does have a campus there. And we also have a campus in Antioch up at Hickory Hollow. And that Hickory Hollow location, that houses our culinary program and also our criminal justice academy. So there's some options there where we are still offering on-site classes for those particular programs. That is something that a dual enrollment student could do if they're interested in going the culinary route or the criminal justice route. And then we also have the main campus up in White Bridge. And there's also some additional campuses as you go further north in the state, up in Humphreys County and in Clarksville. So that's kind of where we are geographically speaking, but certainly we're accessible online and virtual. As is with Columbia State, primarily most of our options are going to continue to be through the online format where you have students basically logging in on the first day of the semester and having to keep up with the assignments through that the instructor indicates in the syllabus. So they'll be able to work at their own pace, but they will have to adhere to the deadlines when things are due. So that's online. Virtual is very similar as if you were coming on campus, only you're doing it through Zoom meetings. Those classes are typically 2 days a week or 1 day a week for 3 hours. Those are options for our students. And there's a limited selection of classes that'll be on campus, very limited because of the pandemic. But students have possibilities through dual enrollment. If you're a high school junior or senior, you can take classes. There's a simple application process, which is some of the information that's being shared with you to follow. Juniors and seniors, juniors can start as early as their end of their sophomore year. So the summer semester before is when they could actually start dual enrollment. And basically they're starting to take college classes. With dual enrollment, the state does offer the grant to help assist with some of the costs. And I think the big thing to take away is that I have to dispel the myth that it's entirely free, whether it's with the grant for dual enrollment, whether it's for the Tennessee Promise for after high school graduation. If you're coming to a community college, there's always going to be a cost involved with textbooks, digital course materials, that sort of thing. But certainly the grant does assist a parent with reducing the number of costs and giving a student the opportunity to take college classes while still in high school. That application process just requires going online. I'm going to use this upcoming spring semester as an example. So certainly that's still an option if you happen to have a current high school junior or senior. We would just need them to do the application online on our website, nscc.edu. And then there's the little teal colored box off to the right. It'll say apply, and you'll complete the dual enrollment application online. We would need your transcript, and that could come from your umbrella school, should come from your umbrella school. And we'll accept them electronically. So high school programs at nscc.edu is where that information will be sent. And with the online application and the transcript, we also have 3 additional forms. We call it the DE participation form, very similar to the consent form that Columbia State uses, requires signatures from student, parent, and then typically somebody from the umbrella school to sign off where it asks for a counselor or principal signature. If you are in a situation where you're just homeschooling directly with the state, you know, that's something that you could just sign off on there. So I think that goes back to that initial question. So we need that participation form. There is an immunization hepatitis B form that's required as well. And then there's also another student form that we have with another signature. I don't like the names of our forms. I wish we had shorter names for our forms, but there's 3 additional application forms that go along with that transcript and online application. And that would be it. We realize that not everybody's taken or had the opportunity to take the ACT, particularly because of the pandemic, how it's disrupted the schedule. With dual enrollment, students are able to take whatever college classes they meet the prerequisites for. However, in light of the situation where so many students were not able to take the ACT, Nashville State, we will waive the prerequisites for any classes that have those based upon ACT, SAT scores, as long as they have a 3.6 high school GPA or higher. And that does extend to the homeschool community as well. So hopefully that could help some students out. The logistics of having to take the ACT, or even the placement exam. We do offer a placement exam, as Columbia State does, the AccuPlacer, but it is a challenge, obviously, with the pandemic. So if you do have a student that has a 3.6 GPA or higher for one of the classes, using English Composition 1 as an example, you know, we would waive the prerequisites and they would be able to take that class. So just something to keep in mind. That's how it is at the moment. We started that back in the fall semester of 2020, and it's continuing into the spring 2021 semester. Will that always be the case going forward? Can't say. You know, we're having to adjust as we go along, but we'll see how that goes. But at least for the moment, that's how it is. And we share a lot of the same deadlines as Ms. Ronda shared. You know, the application deadlines, the start of the semester, January 19th is when our semester begins. So we're pretty much in sync with all those deadlines as well. And, you know, I'm a big advocate for dual enrollment. It does give students the opportunity to test the waters. You know, the dual comes in with being able to take a college course, have it also count for a high school graduation requirement. But at the same time, they're earning that college transcript. And that's really nice. And I think also from a homeschool parent's perspective, it gives you a little break from instruction for at least one class. You know, if they're taking a class where they're actually getting that instruction through the college and earning that college credit. So it's a nice opportunity, certainly, to take advantage of. There's a lot of different options out there. Just like Columbia State, Nashville State, credits will transfer within the state of Tennessee to other community colleges within the state, but then also to the state institutions, the state universities, and the UT system, and even beyond that. Oftentimes we'll get questions, I know Ronda does too, about will this transfer to A, B, and C university? And the safe answer is typically yes, but you always want to do your homework, because private institutions, you know, they can set their own rules. So it's always good practice to check if you and your student already have some universities in mind that they may be considering, to already have that conversation to see how useful that credit can be going forward to them in the future, because it will depend on what major they pursue. It will depend on certain variables. So there's transfer specialists and folks that you can talk to at the universities or email and just kind of have that verification. But the course equivalencies are in place with all the 6 state universities, which include University of Memphis, MTSU, TSU, Austin P, Tennessee Tech in Cookeville, and also ETSU over in Johnson City, and then the 3 UT schools, Knoxville, UT Chattanooga, UT Martin. So, that's pretty solid as far as the transferability, that Tennessee transfer pathways are in place. But you just want to check if you're looking at an out-of-state institution, if you're looking at maybe a private institution in the state. Both Rhonda and I, we've seen students go on and transfer to private institutions or out of state and have their dual enrollment credits follow them and assist them going forward. But if you can narrow it down already, and it's hard because not every student knows, it's always good practice to have that conversation with the other institutions just to be able to maximize that credit. But that's it. Once a student completes the application process, they're then admitted to the college as a dual enrollment student, and then they're able to register theirs for classes. We do things a little bit differently with Nashville State. I know at Columbia State, we kind of, I like to say, empowered the student to register themselves. We would assist certainly if need be. With Nashville State, we're a little more controlling with our dual enrollment, where once a student's admitted, we'll have that discussion and we'll actually do the registering for them that first semester to make sure that they're in the right class, the right section for what they want to take. But they'll receive email address, Nashville State email address. They are technically Nashville State students. So it's certainly a great opportunity, just kind of extends the options that you all have as homeschool families, places to consider. So just something to keep in mind going forward on maybe just taking a look at the Nashville State website just to see what potential classes might be of interest. Maybe it's just a time, maybe there's a time slot that's open with our schedule that's not available with Columbia State. You could even do both. We have some students that I've seen do that. They take dual enrollment with multiple institutions. So, you're going to get taken care of if you go to Columbia State by Ronda. I assure you, I worked with her for many years. You're in good hands there. You're in good hands with Nashville State. So it's just nice to have some additional options. And that kind of covers the application process. My contact information will be on there if you do have any additional questions. And as far as costs, I know that's something that it's always a little tricky because it'll depend on what the classes are, what classes, how many students or how many classes that the student wants to take. And that's always a discussion I say, you want to have with your student. You want dual enrollment to be a positive opportunity and benefit your student going forward. It's easy to sometimes get, jump in too deep if you might have like, ooh, I want to take these 3 classes right off the bat, your student. And certainly, students can take as many classes as they would like, but I always say it's best to start that first semester a bit cautiously and just try one. That's always my advice. Certainly you can take 2 if you'd like to, but I always say just test the waters, see how it is with one class, see how it goes. And then in that next semester, you can always build on that and go forward. I think one of the things that a dual enrollment student has to be prepared for is the ability to self-advocate. That's something that's important because the instructor is not going to know that you're still in high school. They don't, and especially now with the virtual format and the online format, even more so now than before. But unless a student volunteers that information, they're not going to know that, whether it's in the virtual classroom or in the actual classroom or online. So they have to be able to, if they don't understand something, ask a question, follow up, and it's okay to ask questions. That's the other thing. We always say that, whether it's to the instructor or to us as kind of liaisons, if you will, if there's questions about something, reach out. I think that's the most important thing to have your student be aware of is, they need to make sure that they're reaching out and asking the questions. Certainly we communicate with the parents with dual enrollment, but the instructors, they're a little more cautious, because they don't know that this is a dual enrollment student. And if a parent approaches them directly via email, they're not going to respond. They're going to check with us and make sure, hey, is this something that I can do? So that's just something to keep in mind. If you do have a student, just making sure and having that discussion with them to be sure to reach out for help, because there's all kinds of support in place. Rhonda had mentioned earlier about the tutoring resources. I think that's one of the greatest resources that the community colleges offer to our students if you need help. And our teachers, they want to, community college teachers want to help, regardless of the institution, Columbia State, Nashville State, they're at that lower level. I'm a community college product, so I'm gonna advocate, and to attest to that. They really go that extra mile. Their classroom sizes are a lot smaller. I think they get to know their students a little better. Nothing against the big universities, but especially for those general ed classes, those freshman and sophomore years of college classes, they're really wanting to help the students learn the information, learn the material. And I think that's a good thing for students to take advantage of and to take advantage of those resources. So just some information just to share with you all today. One of the other things, I know that we had some students and families that have middle school students, and that's something, how soon can I get involved? How soon can they have that opportunity to take college classes? And, Ms. Ronda had mentioned that, they categorize it as academically talented and gifted. There's a similar application process, but that is an opportunity. There's just no grant money to assist those students for the freshmen and sophomores that want to do that. They do have to be at Nashville State, they do have to at least be freshmen and sophomores to be able to take classes, but there's just no grant money to assist. So it would be entirely out of pocket. And I believe that would be also the same with Columbia State. If you have a student that's a little younger than that, I just got a question the other day from a parent of a 7th grade student who's, exceptionally bright, wants to be challenged. And this is an alternative that and you may already certainly be aware of this option, but modernstates.org is a non-for-profit. It's a nationwide non-for-profit. And they offer a variety, I think it's about 20 or so, 25 general education college courses entirely online. And these are academic curriculum that's developed by, legitimate professors. I believe there's, from some of the Ivy League schools got together, and they put this together, this program. And so that you can actually learn online, take the courses online, and there's absolutely, from my understanding, no cost involved. And it's a great opportunity, I think, if you have maybe a student that, wanting that challenge, wanting that to try it out, see if they're ready for, maybe taking a college course or two. I think that's a nice way to do it without having your pocketbook affected. So it's, once again, Modern States, MODERNSTATES.org. And please don't let, Dr. Jackson, my campus president, know I'm advocating for them, but this is just a nice thing, because we've seen, when I was at Columbia State, I saw some students come through, and primarily in the homeschool communities, I've seen them take advantage of this. And so you're taking this online course, and then you're also, at the end, you take an exam, and then you get a voucher. There's a voucher that allows you to take the CLEP exam, and you can actually earn college credit. And I do not believe there's any age restrictions or anything like that. So I think this is just another alternative for you all, if you have a student in that situation that maybe is not able to do the dual enrollment or the academically talented and gifted yet, but ready, intellectually and academically to try. I think this would be a safe route to go. So just something to keep in mind. That's another alternative, to consider if you have a student that's in that situation, because that is a nice way to do it and still have that opportunity to earn college credit through the CLEP exam. And to my understanding, it doesn't cost anything. Textbooks, materials are provided, the online instruction is provided, and the voucher to take the CLEP exam. So there's really, no financial risk to you. So that's a nice thing to be aware of too. I'm just going to close real quickly talking about the cost with dual enrollment. I think those first 2 dual enrollment grants, the state makes it overly complicated. I think just to drive me and Rhonda bananas with trying to explain it all, because it is so, all the rules, they change. I think the takeaway is the first 2 are the large ones that cover up to $500 of the tuition cost. So I think, if anything, I think to help a student out, it's beneficial to at least take advantage of those 2 $500 grants, because those will cover the $498 tuition of a 3 credit hour class. And then you just have the cost of any textbooks to pay for. And then the increments kind of break off. They go 200, no money for the 4th, and so on. But I think if you just kind of look at the first 2 and see how it goes, and then if it is a positive experience, at that point you can decide, do I want to make, does my student want to take a 3rd or 4th course somewhere down the line, and realize that there will be a little bit more out-of-pocket expense involved. So, but the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation, they provide the dual enrollment grant, they provide the Hope Scholarship, Tennessee Promise. And like Miss Ronda mentioned, Miss Annie Trout, she's a great resource. She covers 2 million miles a day. I don't know how she covers this big chunk of the state, trying to explain all the nuances about not just the dual enrollment grant, but all the many scholarships that the state offers. So she is a good resource as well. And, I'll be happy to stick around if there's any questions. I just appreciate you letting me be on the program today and help you all out. I appreciate what you all do. We ended up switching our 2 boys. I've got a 6th grader and an 8th grader. And at the beginning of the semester, we switched to Tennessee virtual school. So not truly homeschooling, but certainly the involvement with their schoolwork has gone up significantly, particularly for my wife, who's the better math person than I am. And I can relate to the comment earlier about, trying to, I wouldn't even want to attempt geometry. So I'll just be honest with you. So hats off to y'all for what you all do as parents, because you do get more involved with their education. And I think that's one of the silver linings from this whole pandemic for us, is that getting more involved. I've learned a lot from attending these events through the years from you all on how to approach things. So it's also been, beneficial to me as well. And it's helped. And our students have adjusted. And I don't know, it's interesting times that we're in, but hopefully some of this information is helpful to folks here and families here going forward.
Michael, thank you so much. Xavier, thank you. Okay, appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay.
A couple of things that I do appreciate. In the chat, I put modernstates.org for those that would like to write that down. And I do appreciate the point about self-advocating, how the students who are in dual enrollment, and that's really what we're doing. We're raising young adults. I think I'm still on that from Miss Margie, that we're not raising children, we're raising young adults. And as they take these additional classes, we're not always going to be the ones that can advocate for them. So they need to be able to learn how to do that, especially in the classrooms when they have questions, and to reach out. So I definitely appreciate that. I did want to ask, if possible, Michael and Rhonda and Miss Margie, if you would put your, if it is appropriate, put your contact information in the chat for those who may want to send you an email or just be able to contact you. I thought I laughed at Rhonda's when she said her fangirl moment. Michael, when you sent the email that you were leaving, transferring from Columbia State, going to Nashville Tech, and it was like, it felt like a breakup. I'm not even gonna lie. When I got that, I was like, oh gosh, no. It's like, well, you're gonna be in good hands. And then Rhonda reached out and said that she was gonna be our point of contact. And that was beautiful. But I just still couldn't let you go. And I was like, well, maybe he will still come and represent Nashville State, because I think it's just so beautiful to have people who are willing to, even for us, we're a big support community, but at the same time, we're so small in the things that are going on. And the fact that you guys take time to answer specific questions to us homeschoolers. We so greatly appreciate that. So thank you to everyone. So, all right, so we're going to make a transition because we have, for the past few moments, Miss Margie, who's with HomeLife, Ronda with Columbia State, and Michael with Nashville Tech. They've given us the logistics of what does it look like going beyond high school. So it may seem in reverse, but I think it's good. It helped me because I knew that if I chose to homeschool high school, my children can still go to college. It was very new territory for me 6 years ago to even think that they could. What does that look like? Excel, there you go. Thank you, babe. So, but now we're going to talk to the meat and potatoes folks. The veteran moms who not only they have graduated students, they have students who are currently in college, they are homeschool graduates. You know, these to me are my personal rock stars. So forgive me if I gush a little too much. I just can't help it. I love every last one of them. So first we're going to have Robin Otts Parker, who's going to speak to us. She's graduated 2 students. I believe she's still homeschooling 1 or 2. She's going to correct me. But she's going to chat about resources, encouragement, and more importantly, her experience, because it looks different for everybody, but just glean her experience and see how that can motivate us to continue or to even take the leap. So Robin, whenever you're ready, you go right ahead.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Yes, Brandy, I only have 3 children, not 4. Please don't try to give me another one. I'm married to Randy Parker. We have 3 children. Deanna's 20, Brendan is 19, and TJ is 9. We live in Columbia, Tennessee. We've been here 14 years. I only heard of homeschooling when my youngest were like 4 and 5. We lived in Louisiana. I heard of homeschooling. My husband's sister was homeschooling, and she was homeschooling because her family was on the mission field. So my husband and I decided to take the plunge. It was a year-to-year thing, and it still is a year-to-year plan 14 years later. My daughter, let's see. We've homeschooled from the beginning. My daughter went to kindergarten in Louisiana, and they moved here in the spring of '06. We enrolled them in Metro Public School in the fall of '06. We moved to Columbia in December of that year and put them in a local public school. Halfway through the semester, we realized it wasn't working out for us. I was actually checking them out once a week for them to see their daddy, because we were self-employed, for them just to see their father. And the school did not look kindly on that. So after that semester was over, we decided we wanted to take the plunge and homeschool. When I first started out, I had not a clue what I was doing. 14 years ago, it was nothing like it is today. You didn't have the support group. You didn't have there was a couple support groups here or there, but it wasn't anything like the organizational stuff it is today. There wasn't a shape. There wasn't 101s, there wasn't 201s. It was just figured out on your own. But in the last 14 years, and Tara can attest to this, it has exploded. It has just gotten so huge, which is really good for the community. Now, fast forward 14 years, when our oldest hit her 8th grade year. My children did take high school credits in their 8th grade year. And you'll know if your child is ready for that by the way they come up through middle school. They don't always have to do that. And if they don't, then you still have plenty of time to get your high school credits in there. In the midst of high schooling, I had a 3-year-old. I have a 3-year-old. I had a child when my children were in middle school. I keep joking, when I'm gonna write a book, never a dull moment in my spare time between homeschooling and running an in-home business. Yes, my husband and I are self-employed. We've been self-employed for over 20 years. God has blessed us and let me be a homeschool mom on a 1-family income for 20 years. I just can't say any more about that. When it comes to homeschooling in general, I don't know how many moms have told me, hey, can't do this. I'm not smart enough to do this. I'm going to do more harm than good. You don't have to have a degree. I don't have a degree. I barely passed high school myself. I joke with them. That's why they made teacher's keys for people like me. Because if you don't know it, you're going to have, and if your child is in something and you don't understand it, there's lots of resources you can reach out and get help, or tutors and people that can help you to help your child understand. If you, okay. There are several different ways you can do high school. One is traditional 4 years. One is dual enrollment, where you take a couple of classes like Michael and Ronda were talking about. The other is you can dual enroll for your junior and senior year, and there have been exceptional kids who graduated from high school and college at the same time, but that's very few and far between in my thinking. Or there's 5th year of high school. If your child just simply isn't getting something and you need to take time and slow down, you have the option to take that 5th year of high school. And the other is finish a semester or a year early. Those are just different ways you can do high school depending on how your child learns and how they think. Dual enrollment, I highly recommend it. Both of my children dual enrolled from Columbia State. At the time, Michael was with Columbia State, and they walked us through the waters, and it was amazing. Both my children did the traditional 4 years of high school. We discussed the 5th year, but it didn't happen. Let's move on to curriculum. I have a 3rd grader. I have a 4th grader this year. Last year in his semester, we switched maths 3 times because I was trying to find that perfect math that fit for his style of learning. I highly recommend you to go to Teach Them Diligently. Teach Them Diligently is a homeschool conference out of Nashville. They have everything you want to know from homeschool. They have breakout sessions. They have a vendor room. They have colleges on hand to speak. You can talk to recruiters. It's just the basically homeschool 101, 201 wrapped in one. I have a friend whose parents purchases them the ticket each year and gives it to her and her husband for a getaway the next year. Some families have come and packed their whole entire family in a hotel room for 3 days. I've actually had people hire my daughter to babysit at the conference so they could go to the breakout sessions. Curriculum also. Would you believe that neither one of my children took Algebra 2 or chemistry? Why put them through something you don't have to have? I saw quickly that neither one of my children were going on a path that they had to have the higher maths and higher sciences. Okay, my daughter took Algebra 1 and geometry, business and consumer, and she was done with her maths. I figure if she had to have Algebra 2, by the time she got to college and took her Algebra 2, she would have her algebra, her college algebra would be Algebra 2. So, but she got there and took statistics and she loved it. Never would I have thought that. Both my Algebra 2 knew they weren't going into anything where they had to have the higher maths. Okay. I know in high schools you have JROTC, which is auxiliary to the Air Force. If you have any child that is 12 or older and military minded, we have an organization called Civil Air Patrol, which my husband is the commander of our local unit, and I have to give a plug there. My son has been in Civil Air Patrol since he was 12. With HomeLife Academy, he actually got 3 high school credits off of Civil Air Patrol. He got a PE, he got an elective, and he got an aerospace science. He is headed to the Air Force next year. But you do not have to go into the armed forces to do Civil Air Patrol. It's just it's an extracurricular activity that gets you ready and prepared. If you want more information about that, you can contact me and let me know. I encourage you to get started early, like spring of junior year, looking at colleges for your child if they're going to college. It was Christmas, my daughter's senior year, and I realized that we had done nothing. We had not looked at colleges. We were like lost. So therefore we jumped on the train. After we got the initial shock, she was going away. We started the wheels moving in the right direction or where we needed to go. We prayed a lot, we laughed a lot, and we cried a lot. But most of all, we tried to have fun with her going to college. The first one was leaving the nest, and I had no idea what this world held for her. But I had confidence that she was raised in her beliefs, and it was time for her to stand on her own 2 feet. Let's face it, you can't bubble wrap your children and keep them home forever. By the time my daughter was in her 2nd year at college, my son was graduating. He was in the class of 2020. As you can guess, the SHAPE graduation got canceled. It was an emotional year for all of us. You think you have been through this once, but the emotion of no graduation comes with new feelings and new thoughts. So be prepared for anything happening. Your child's any year in high school, anything can happen. No 2 children are the same. Both of my older 2 children took separate paths, and we couldn't be proud of them, the dreams they've pursued. One's in college and one is going into the military. Just because you went to college or your husband went to college doesn't necessarily mean your child is college material. If they decide later in life they want to go to college, they will figure it out. In the words of Mac Abbitt, life is a real good teacher. Life happens every day and things happen. I had a baby in the middle of my children's middle school years. We took some time off for that. You have deaths in the family, you have illnesses, you have things come up. Take time off. Don't be so rigorous to where you think you have to do book stuff every day, because life is homeschooling is everywhere. When life throws you a curve, learn to roll with it. Sorry guys. If you get up one day and decide it's not happening, all your kids are in a funk, life is just not going the way you want, and bookwork is going to be a battle, simply say it's not going to happen. Go to the park, take the day off, do something fun, get to know your team, do something that they want to do, because in the blink of an eye, they're going to be gone and not with you. Learn to be flexible. I'll never forget my first Teach Them Diligently, listening to a lady speak. She said, imagine all the curriculum you have picked out for your child sitting on the middle of the dining room table. Put a sheet over it and you've covered it. Simple as that. The material's covered. It seems you just got to think out of the box. No matter how many places you set up in your home, homeschooling always comes back to my kitchen table. I can have a desk set up in the office. I can have them in their bedroom. I can have them in the living room, but it always comes back to the kitchen table, no matter what, which the kitchen table is the hub of the family. And last but not least, take care of yourself. Take time for yourself. If you can get wrapped, if you get wrapped up in your kids' activities and everything going on, but make sure you take time for yourself, because if you don't, you're no good to your family. I know Shape hosts Mom's Night Out. If you can't make that, grab a few friends, go for coffee, call for a park date, call school one day and just go to the park. Take a date night with your husband, but take care of yourself, because if you're the teacher, you have to be your best for them. And in closing, after 14 years of homeschooling, my advice is be flexible, learn with your child, have fun, think out of the box, and most of all, ask for help from veteran homeschool moms who need help.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Robin. I needed that. I needed all of that. A few of my own personal takeaways. It doesn't matter how luxurious your homeschool setup is, it's something about that kitchen table. All the money I could have saved, just knowing that I would still be at that kitchen table. And self-care is not selfish. And I think that we don't realize that enough. We wear many, many hats. And then when we choose to educate our children, which really from a scriptural standpoint is the most natural thing in the world, but we also sometimes lose ourselves in that. So we need to make sure that we take care of ourselves, because by us being 100%, then we can give our children that. So we must be able to refuel ourselves. So thank you so much for allowing me to twist your arm. I really appreciate it. And this is just the beginning. So, you're never one and done.
I was moving out of my comfort zone. I've never done this before.
I love it. And I thank you for that. And I'm going to keep you out of your comfort zone, I promise. So, all right. So thank you so much, Robin. Next, we have Tara Ebert. And I love Tara. I don't even know how I can even give an intro. So I'm just going to hand it over to Tara, because she's going to give it all to you better than I ever could anyway. So please go right ahead, Tara.
All right. Thank you for having me. And I'm in it with Robin. I've been in homeschooling for 16 years, and I came into this community when Shape was about 10 moms that would just get together at the park or eat lunch together. So we have really enjoyed the growth of Shape and all the opportunities that it's provided. I remember when we started 101 and 201, and it just fills my heart. But now I'm at a season where I do have 4 children. I got the extra one that Robin didn't want. And my oldest is in college. She took a very traditional path. So we did the normal stuff. You get through high school. She was very self-motivated, did her, signed her up for the ACT. That was a simple process, right? Not a problem at all. Got to the second child, same thing, traditional path. They're going to go to college. They know what they want to do. That may not be so traditional for some of our families, but my kids knew from early on what they wanted to do. And so again, sign him up for the ACT. He would beg for accommodations. I'm like, you don't need any. But my biggest fear started back in 4th grade with my 3rd child, because we knew from the very beginning, like as a toddler, we were told she's going to have some severe learning disabilities. You're going to have to accommodate. You're going to have to make plans. And most of those plans that were advised to me were just stick her in public school so that she can get whatever resources she needed. So we chose to homeschool and take just a little different path. When I started out this process of planning for her schooling, I did not realize the severity of some of the learning disabilities that were there. I knew that, okay, she has dyslexia, she's going to have difficulty reading. She was diagnosed apraxic, so she's going to have to be taught to talk. And then as we got into homeschooling, I didn't realize like she was having problems with math. And I'm like, okay, well, this is like teaching to read. Like we just, figure it out. I didn't have programs then that we have now available or that I was even aware of. A lot of those things weren't available to homeschool parents, only to teachers. And so we got as far as we could in schooling. And then at 4th grade, actually started putting the ball into motion as far as getting some testing done, which in the community as a whole that we live in the world we live in, dyslexia by the education system is seen as a medical issue, and by the medical community it's seen as an education issue, and the kids just kind of get stuck in the middle without the appropriate resources. And so as a parent, you have to fight for every single resource that's available and you can get, and that was no different with testing. But we were thinking down the road, if this child chooses to go to college, and being realistic, that may not be a path she chooses, we need to prepare her. And so we need to do this testing earlier on, not because I needed a diagnosis. I already knew what was wrong with our learning process and was learning how to remediate that. But what I needed to know more of was what's going to happen if she needs accommodations in high school for testing. And so our first testing that we went through was through MTSU Dyslexia Center. And they sent me, I don't even know how many pages this thing is, 16-page report. And it only focused on her dyslexia. So they laid out some basics of here are the programs available to you as a homeschool parent. We're willing to train you if you need to use those programs as well. Here are all the tests that we performed. Here's where she stands. All the basics you're going to get in a report. But one of the things that was really crucial, a couple of things that are in that report that were crucial for us, was that if she ever went into a public school, they already had it laid out what her 504 or her IEP would look like. So to us, that was kind of like, okay, if she were in public school and we were thinking this, like the school would be handling all this because she'd have an IEP or a 504. And when you have those accommodations already set into place, then the ACT, you just submit that they already have an IEP and you can get whatever accommodations have already been in place through the school system. As a homeschool parent, I have to document everything that we did as far as any accommodations. So I started initially when we had the first exam done. She was 6th grade. And I remember I started thinking about this in 4th grade and contacting people and trying to figure out, even in 5th grade, we actually sent an application to MTSU, but it was still a whole nother year before we could get the evaluation done. because of their timing. So one of the things that I had to do at that point was I made the decision to test her locally, just doing achievement tests that some of the tutorials would offer. And I wrote my own letter about all the accommodations she would need and asked them to allow those accommodations. They did. They signed off as director. So that was my first piece of paperwork that I had that said, these are the things that she needed in order to test. That would automatically be done in a public school because they test every so many years. And so you have some kind of a paperwork trail that goes with that. Once we had the report done, it laid out specifically all the different sorts of accommodations that she was going to need, as well as part of that was she needs to have oral, not just reading. Margie mentioned that some kids learn best by having both. We have to have both. And that if she ever took the ACT, so even in 6th grade, in that report, it tells us if she's ever going to take the SAT or ACT, that she will need full accommodations and that she is covered under the American Disability Act. So that report in itself now labeled her as a student that has a disability covered federally. Just because of her dyslexia, that was it, just the dyslexia for that report. Okay, so you know, some parents are like, we know they have dyslexia, why test them? Because that's going to be needed later. Now, with the ACT, they like more recent tests, so we also were aware of that. Okay, we kind of have a foundation. We have some legal avenues to start providing this foundation. I went and had the testing done at another tutorial, and I wrote my own letter, you know, like we've got some paperwork going. But then we decided that at 9th grade, that it was probably best to go ahead and pay to have a formal neuropsych educational evaluation done. That is the test that gives you the diagnosis, the medical diagnosis that allows the ACT request. The SAT is a little different, but we chose to go the ACT route with her. And when we did that, again, that's like another 16, 17 page report of all the tests they do. The difference in the two testings was that the neuroeducational psych test, it will have an IQ test done along with, they were able to formally diagnose the dyscalculia, and they were also to formally diagnose the ADD, along as her educational anxiety. So that is a real thing. Kids that like freak out when you mention math, and I have one. So, you know, we have to be sensitive to that. But they put in her report again that mentioning the ACT, that not only will she need accommodations for that, but they actually put in there that even within her workplace. So again, they're covering that American Disability Act of that she will need full accommodations for whatever's needed to do her job, much less to take a test. So that was vital to us. So those were the two reports, the two evaluations that we had done. And MTSU, theirs usually are free, but trying to get in is like a nightmare these days. But anybody can go have a neuropsych done, educational testing done. Your insurance may or may not cover it, so you have to, you know, figure out, you know, what that is. But I advise, if you're looking for accommodations on the ACT, that's definitely the route you want to go as far as getting a medical diagnosis that's documented. So moving forward from there, the ACT, our umbrella is HomeLife. Thank you, Jesus. And they were like, it is not a problem. I've sent all my reports to HomeLife. So through the years, they've had all the documentation that I've had anytime we did anything with her testing. And they sent some forms that said they were authorization forms. Let me see what I had to fill out. These are, let me see, these are from the ACT, okay? So these are the forms that ACT requires. And I think you can print them from the ACT site, but they had also sent me links to do that. And I had to fill out that form as far as what accommodations she had been receiving in the classroom. Okay, so that's my kitchen table. And the testing that she had done and what the results were those. So I summarized that. And I signed it. I'm the teacher. And then we had some a teacher survey form. So they ask you questions like, are they able to get started on their own? Are they able to finish work on time? Never. And so just some things like that we had to cover the basis of. The next ACT form was just a consent to release information. So that was to make sure that everybody could communicate and be on the same page. So at that point, the accommodations we were going for were at their highest level of accommodations. They do provide extended time. So maybe you have an ADHD child that things are affected because of their within their schoolwork. Not all ADHD kids have problems with schoolwork. Some of it's just behavioral, and some it's the other. It's like it only shows up when they have to be really organized with something, and they do fine socially. So they may qualify for extended time, which usually is like time and a half that they give them. They may test over multiple days. That's what we were going for, is kind of unlimited testing. If you have a blind student, they obviously offer Braille as an accommodation. They can get larger test booklets. So if you need them enlarged, they can provide a human reader. Now we did that as far as an accommodation back when she was doing that testing in 5th grade here locally, and we provided a human reader for her. So I was able to document that this is what we've already been doing. They have, there's a whole list. You can go to ACT and look at their policies for that, but just some examples of some things that are available to them. And so they have actually a timing chart on the ACT website as well that's going to lay out what standard time is for each test, and then what happens if they're allowed double time, if they're allowed triple time over multiple days. That is what we were awarded, triple time over multiple days. And each test is set out their time and a half. You can have medical issues too, like a friend of mine has a diabetic son, and so he was given extended time and allowed to have his phone with him. So there's all sorts of levels of accommodations that are available, but you do have to start filling out that paperwork. So we started that process in September, hoping to test in December. And we sent in we sent a formal request to HomeLife. They sent back paperwork and consents. We filled all that out, sent that back to them, sent all of our reports again, just so we had everything together. And then we waited. It didn't take long, a couple of weeks to get those accommodations through. Where the hangup was, that was really an issue on my end, was that once ACT said you have all these accommodations, which we were allowed triple time over multiple days, and she will actually have a pre-recorded test along with her test booklet, so she can read it and hear it at the same time. She can stop it and do whatever. I knew that not all schools and testing locations would accept all the accommodations, like you have to make those arrangements. Last year, the schools, you just picked the ones that allowed accommodations. This year, that is on the parent or the school system. Okay, so we don't have a counselor calling schools or knowing what's going on. So instead it was, well, that's up to you. Call some testing locations and see if they will accommodate. So I called one, they agreed. And then when I called them back and sent them the confirmation page that ACT requires them to fill out, they said, I'm sorry, we're not going to do it. So I wasted 4 weeks just trying to get them in the loop, and that didn't happen. And then I made a list. You have up to a 70-mile radius to work within. If it goes beyond that, then ACT will take over and find a place for your accommodations for testing. But 70 miles, that means we were thinking we might have to spend overnight someplace so she could get up and take the test. We are taking it at Independence High School. They have been fabulous. All my other kids have taken it there. They've also taken it at Columbia State. But my go-to has always been Independence. Like, they could just fix anything. That they're really great with homeschoolers. So, and I have talked to other high schools, but they just couldn't accommodate. So what happens is the ACT pays extra for a teacher to give your student that test one-on-one. She will not be in with the group of regular people testing. When you get into special accommodations where there's time and a half, double time or triple time over days, you are one-on-one with a tester at that point. So those have to be scheduled. Well, as you can imagine, that's not going to happen on one day on a Saturday. So usually they test a Saturday, Sunday, and then they go into the next weekend and you do it Saturday and Sunday then again. My test date range was December 12th to December 27th. Okay, right over Christmas. So we have now scheduled for 2 Sundays in a row to do her testing. She'll have 8 hours each day, and we're still, we're hoping that that's going to be enough, but it may be that she has to go in and be tested a 3rd day on Christmas week. We don't know just yet, but ACT sends back an approval. They tell you exactly what your accommodations are, and HomeLife was great. Whenever they sent the initial accommodation request in, they called me and said, hey, you have some options, and they went over those options with me for testing. And so I was able to say, yeah, I'd rather it have a pre-recorded test than just an enlarged test, or whatever, really trying to meet some auditory issues along with the visual, the dyslexia. So that's kind of been my process. That's where I'm at right now. I really pray I never have to do that again. That's the honest part of it. Like so I said I started this in September. I just found out yesterday that everything is good and we are on track to go with it. And I printed off her ticket today, and that was just like, I ran through the house. I was like, yay! Like, she actually has a ticket like a normal student would. So start early. It starts years early. It may start middle school that you need to start thinking, okay, what do I need to have proof of? Working with your pediatrician, calling a neuropsychologist to do that testing that can really give those diagnoses, because ACT won't even entertain the idea unless you have some sort of diagnosis, ADHD or something medical. So that's what we had to do. Not only prove educationally, but also medically that she qualified. So I feel like I'm comfortable now with this, and I'm like, okay, we've done it and we're good. And I am happy to answer questions from anybody. As you said, dyslexia would come up, only in the context of my mention of it, the ACT, but your children do have rights, and they do have that option. Not all people with dyslexia are going to need an accommodation on the ACT. Not all people with ADHD are going to need an accommodation. So don't just think that's an automatic, oh, we need this. It'll be fairly obvious throughout their schooling whether you think they're going to need additional help. And if they even choose college, because I was the parent saying, you have choices, and maybe college isn't the choice that we need to be headed toward. So I was actually discouraging her choosing a college path, but she is determined. She's actually going to do a certificate program. She's not going to do a 2-year or the 4-year degree. But she chose a program that she said, I need to do this for me. This is my thing. So that is why we supported her in that and worked so hard through the years to make sure if she chose that path, we were prepared.
Tara, that is wonderful. Just, oh my goodness. It's I just really appreciate you sharing that. And it would be a complete disservice that you've done all that hard work and that you won't share it for years and years and years to come.
Yes, we are strong advocates for learning disabilities around here, right? And there's a question from Rhonda about her child with.
Yes, but go up one real quick.
One more, Rachel.
Rachel, yes.
Yes. Okay. So I've heard this question before. My child's coming out of public school and they have this 504. Make sure you have all your documentation from your public school, like a medical record. Go get their record and make sure you have that. As far as it following them into their homeschool, just the way that's questioned, homeschoolers, every homeschooler has an IEP, according to Margie Abbitt with HomeLife, right? Everybody has an individual plan. So you're not really going to need that so much, other than just, like I said, I had resources from testing to say, hey, this is how your kid's learning and what you need to do. She has to have completely multi-sensory to learn, even through high school. Like a lot of kids, we see that in K through 3, but it kind of, wanes off as the kids start maturing in their education and whatnot. Ours did not end there. We still touch, feel, hear, the whole thing, even through high school. She's a junior right now. So that will never leave you. The 504, that is a resource. That is a document that you need to make sure that you have. Any testing that they had done where that was used as far as the timing, then absolutely document and keep it and have names and numbers that people can follow up with, even if it's those early years, because and send it to your umbrella school. Like everybody has files. We keep everybody on the same page. I hope that answered what you were asking, Rachel. If not, just let me know and clarify a little more. Let's see.
Can I add just a little bit of something in there?
Yes.
Some of that, because this has become a big issue. ACT used to not be real picky at all. I've actually done ACT accommodations for kids over the years, and all of a sudden they got really picky. So what Tara's saying about keeping a track record, a lot of times parents will wait till they get close to high school and say, oh, well, I know my kids had these issues, and ACT is going to want to see that track record. They really are now wanting to see that you did have that. She did an excellent job keeping track. I was like, man, Tara, you're doing great. And so, because that's exactly what they want right now, is they're wanting people to not just pick anything. Oh, suddenly my child has dyslexia, or whatever. They do like to see that. So you did a great job. And Crystal, if you email crystal@homelifeacademy.com, she is our ACT accommodation specialist right now. So
Yes, Crystal has been fabulous. And I actually, Caitlin is who works with independents, and I had to connect them in the emails, and Caitlin didn't know the process. I mean, it's changed this semester. And so we were kind of in both ends, all three of us. I'm like, this is what they're telling me. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that had changed. And then they're like, oh, I don't need to fill the form out. Nope, you need to fill the form out. So it was a little process and a lot of communication, but it wasn't something that happened quickly. It wasn't something that, they say allow 4 weeks before the exam and start this process. I'm 12 weeks before our exam. That was when I started the process, and to have it in place. And you do have to register for the ACT. And when you register for a date, put that you are seeking accommodations, because that gets the ball in motion. So you can't really put the ball in motion unless you've already said, I have an account, I'm registering for a date, and go from there. So that's going to be your first step, is just registering.
Miss Margie, I saw that in the comments in the chat. So Rachel said that should HomeLife have that documentation with the school transcript, with that point of contact, is that Crystal with HomeLife Academy, who would have the documentation for is that the 504? So would all that have been sent, and but is that who she would need to contact?
I think Margie may have walked away.
Okay.
I always tell parents, make sure that when records are sent over, that anything, especially at 504, I would call HomeLife and ask them, you know, when these records were sent over, did they send over the IEP or the 504 accommodations
Okay.
record of it, so that we have record.
Okay. So Rachel, please, if you have not done so already, I know Miss Margie has put her information in the chat, as well as given the email for the HomeLife ACT accommodations counselor in the chat. So make sure you pull those two resources. Okay. Tara, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing and always being willing to share, and that you're so honest with any of the challenges that you've had, especially with any of the disabilities. I think the way that you speak about it, and the way that you are so open to share it, and the way your daughter openly shares it, takes the stigma away of being embarrassed to discuss dyslexia, dyscalculia, is that correct? Dysgraphia. And it's just a precious privilege, because we all have to accept the adjustments. Not, I don't want to say limitations, but I just don't feel like they're limitations. These are things that she is consistently overcoming, and it's just, I just appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing.
Can I share
Okay.
one more thing, Miss?
Yes.
One more thing I wrote down what she said is that we call them children with challenges, because you overcome a challenge, you know, and so we really do that. But one thing we have noticed from talking to parents, and I just want to throw this out here, is that lots of times, if you've not had your children at home, you've not been watching like Tara has over the years, but you've seen a child that struggled, they don't maybe get really obstinate and just absolutely do not want to do homework, but they're willing to go out and mow the backyard or do something. I mean, and a lot of times these kids will get called lazy and in other things, because they think that they just don't, they're just being stubborn or thing. And we said, we'll tell people that might be a very warning sign that you need to have some testing done. You might have a child, it's not that they don't want to do it, they just feel very defeated because they can't do it. And so don't be afraid of testing. We started homeschooling in the 1980s. If you tested your child, social services to come get you, you know, so it was different. It's so different today. Today you can test your kids. There is stuff like Tara, you know, colleges and probably Michael and Rhonda could speak to, the colleges have stuff to help these kids, you know, and it's just the help is there. But sometimes if you're seeing things in your children, you might want to talk to a counselor, call us, and we now at HomeLife have special struggling learner counselors that we are training into working with these kids to make sure they're getting the opportunities they need and not just fall through the cracks. So.
Thank you, Miss Margie. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to go to our final speaker today, and it's a treat because Lisa Russell, she is a homeschool graduate who is also now homeschooling her children from high school to elementary, or unless it's even, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's preschool. I think there's like a 3 or 4 year old there. So I'm going to hand it over to Lisa. So whenever you're ready, my friend, you go for it.
Okay, I'm Lisa Russell. So I have 5 children that are 15. My boys are 15 and 4, born on the same day, 11 years apart. And then I have girls that are 11, 9, and 7. So I'm a second generation homeschooler. My mom heard about homeschooling from Focus on the Family radio show in 1985. And I was a struggling learner. I have what they call silent dyslexia. So I could read, but that was about it. And I was one of those obstinate, gonna drop out of school in 4th grade people. And my mom was spending so much time doing homework with me every night. She said, this is ridiculous. If homeschooling's an option, I'm just going to keep you home. But she worked for the attorney for the school board for Hillsborough County, Florida. And so he said, you cannot homeschool, it's not legal. And she said, okay, we'll see what happens. 2 months later, he came to her in her office. He said, I need to tell you something. They have just passed the law in Florida that you can homeschool. And I didn't drop out. My mom pulled me out of school 6 weeks later. So I just want to take a minute to talk about some of my experiences as a graduate now homeschooling, because it's a whole different thing from the other side of the table. My mom, bless her heart, she made it look easy. And I know I was not an easy student. Sometimes my 15-year-old said, Mom, when am I ever going to use this math again? And I said, I said the same thing. I burned my Saxon book and said, I am never doing this again. And now I am. So, God has a sense of humor with these things. I want to start, other than this introduction, with reading some Bible verses. This is from Deuteronomy, and Moses is retelling, he's narrating all of the events that have happened to the Israelites since they left Egypt, headed to the promised land. His time with them is about over, and he's encouraging them in the Lord and moving everything over to Joshua. But he says, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart and with all thy soul and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart. And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. This is Deuteronomy 6, verses 5 through 7. And these are verses that my husband and I encourage each other in a lot when we're fighting over that algebra lesson with a teenager who just doesn't want to do it. Or when I'm in the middle of a biology lesson with a 15-year-old and the 4-year-old dumps every Lego in the house, everywhere, destroys the Starship Cruise Lego, I don't know, thing that took forever to build. Everybody's having meltdowns. We're like, what is the phone number for that public school again? We pull these verses up and we encourage that it's not just about the math lesson and the biology lesson, but it is when we're sitting eating supper, when we're driving on an errand and we have an opportunity to discuss something from, a billboard or from something we're hearing on the radio, before they go to bed, when they get up. This is a long-term, full-time commitment. And so I wanted to share those verses. And also, sorry, a loud truck just went by and it took my train of thought, right? It drove right by with it. I'm outside hiding because all the children are inside. And as soon as I start talking, they want to know what's going on. So I'm hiding. Anyway, it's a long-term commitment. When I moved to Tennessee from Florida, I was born and raised in Tampa, and I knew everybody in the homeschool community. After I graduated, my mom had an umbrella school similar to HomeLife on a smaller scale. So I kept involved even after I graduated, and I moved up here and had a baby right away and didn't know anybody. So I started going to the library, and that's where I met Tara. Here I was with a little baby, and she's in story time with her kids. And I knew Tara was somebody I wanted to know and be friends with. And she's helped me through, coming to terms with a kid who has far more severe dyslexia than I ever had. And at 15, he has some struggles, but we have a Learning Ally account and he does audiobooks all day long. And when he went to a dyslexia tutor, she questioned whether he had dyslexia or not, because his vocabulary at 11 was off the charts as he's talking about vanquishing the foes. And he talks like a mixture of King James Bible and Shakespeare most days at 11. He's a little less socially awkward now, getting there. But anyway, it's just something that can be done. And there's going to be holes. There's going to be things that you don't hit or your student doesn't get, areas that maybe they can talk days about World War II, but they don't have a clue about algebra. When you get to college, a lot of those things fix themselves, whether it's through tutoring, and a lot of times just the age. I've seen it with my friends and I that homeschooled. I was the first homeschooler that went to college in our area. There was no dual enrollment. My brother was the second student that dual enrolled in Tampa. And it was a process. My mom spent hours on the phone with guidance counselors telling her that it wasn't even something that could happen. But I know that those of us, even some of my friends that really struggled with math in high school, they got to college and they wanted it now. They had a plan, they knew where they wanted to go, and they made it work. I have friends that I graduated with that are massage therapists. A friend is a doctor, he's a specialist. What do they call him? He's an emergency room specialist. So all he does is ER stuff. I have a friend that is high up in the Marine Corps. The Marines paid him to go to linguistics school and get a degree. He actually got a master's in Arabic. That's what it's in. And now he's way up in the military. So there's just so many opportunities for your kids when they figure out what they want to do, to own their education, and they will find a way to do it regardless of your limitations as a teacher. Kids are resilient and they will do what they want to do. I wanted to share a quick story and then I'm done. Just going back in the history of homeschooling. I shared this story with my husband this morning from Facebook, and he said, "Oh, you have to read this." So this is from Michael Ferris, who I don't know if he still works for HSLDA, but he was an attorney with HSLDA. Do y'all know what HSLDA is? I can see some people. If you know, yes, okay. I thought you shook your head no, Tara. I was like, wait a minute. So anyway, back in 1994. So in 1994, I was just turned 18 years old, and there was a congressman named George Miller from California who was trying to make a provision that every teacher had to be certified in every subject that they taught. So if you taught high school, you had to be certified in anything that you taught, and they were trying to make this go to homeschoolers as well, which was effectively going to shut down homeschools. It was also a problem in the private school sector. It would have just, it was a mess. But HSLDA in 1994, before the internet, before social media, before email, started a phone tree and had people calling. And the homeschoolers shut down the switchboard at the Capitol to the point where someone they needed somebody to do something really fast in the Senate or in the House of Representatives where things don't happen fast. But the guy's chief of staff called and said, "How can I make the phone call stop?" And when they told him, they went on the Senate floor, they told the guy what he had to do. He and the other guy shook hands and they stopped the bill. Homeschoolers are powerful. It doesn't matter what happens in politics. It doesn't matter what happens with COVID. We love our students and we will make things happen, and our kids will make things happen. So I just want to encourage you. I know we've had a lot of nitty-gritty on how to do things and what to do, and that's fantastic. We need to know what to do, but I want to encourage you that even when you fail, even when your kids fall on their faces, they are still learning and it's going to be okay.
Lisa, thank you so much, and you're so right. One of the things that I appreciate is that with all of us, our children, when we pulled them, because I pulled mine out of public school, and you get to see them. You get to see their day-to-day. You get to see the personality. You know, it was as if I had to relearn. I had to get to know my kids again, because for a period of time, all I was used to is getting them up, go to school, come home, dinner, a little homework, go to bed. And then on the weekends, it wasn't as if I was mother of the year because I'm tired, I'm working. So when you get to see your children and how they develop, or anything that's brought to your attention, to your point, you're able to now focus on any challenges or anything that they have that you know that you can help them with. And I love the fact that we don't have to profess to be experts in anything.
Right.
But we are 100% invested in our children. They're ours. And my grandmother would always say, you can't hurt what you love. So despite, like you said, do not allow, it says you told to own your education despite, and I even put our perceived limitations, because we as homeschool moms, we're hard on ourselves. We're unreasonably hard on ourselves. And what we don't see is that they see how we overcome. They see how we help them. They see how we learn with them. And so I forever appreciate that. So thank you so much for your experience. Thank you for being willing to share it. And
I have called my mom more than once and said, Mom, how on earth did you homeschool before the internet? How did you homeschool before Google? I don't know, except that I was the weird kid who took the encyclopedia up on top of the swing set and read it when everything else was read and I was bored. But I mean, the homeschool climate's changed so much. And I guess that's where I'm speaking is make a decision and stick with it. Don't be swayed by all the options out there. Just do the things that you need to do for your kids and it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate that.
I love it. It takes right back to the beginning where we talked about focus. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Ms. Margie, but I can't see you.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I should turn my video back on. There you go.
Go ahead.
We're a work in progress, but I loved as she was talking because I lived a lot of that. I was one of those mamas that called Washington. And I was like, oh, it affected the kids. They knew what we were doing. That was crazy. But those were times that we felt like somebody wasn't true. We were thankful for Homeschool Legal Defense being there for us. I always tell parents all the time, they're the reason we all get to homeschool because they were in play. But one of the things you were talking about too is I always think about that nobody cares anymore about your child's education than you do. And Brandy, you tied right into what God began to lay on my heart was that children follow our lead. You know, that if we lead them with fear and anxiety and stress, that's where they're going to go. They're going to be, but if we lead them in love and peace and joy and knowing we're doing the right thing, knowing we're, you know, and I just love, I think I could just hug Lisa's mama because I'm thinking, oh, I was there with her, you know, and people thought we were crazy, but we just had to do it because we felt like that's what God led us to do. And we did it. And I don't remember really being afraid or being anxious or being stressed out of it. I just knew that nobody would care more about my kids' education than I did. It doesn't mean the enemy doesn't come to lay guilt on us as parents that maybe we're not doing good enough or, you know, so one thing I used to tell myself, I said, well, I never got up one day thinking I'm just going to ruin my children. I think I will just do a bad job at this. You know, I didn't. I got up and did the very best I knew how to do every single day. And for God, that is good enough. And he makes beauty for ashes. He does beautiful things. And so don't be afraid. None of us have done it perfect, you know, but yet God is going to help you walk through every bit of that. And you'll get to look back and think there's beautiful Lisa. Her mother's probably so proud of her. You know, when I see my children homeschooling their children, and then when my son convinced his wife to homeschool their children, and she's an awesome homeschool mom, that's the fruit of your labor. And a lot of times that's really good. But keep your focus on the positive things. I just have to kind of enter a little bit more about the anxiety because I am getting a lot of calls about stressed out, anxiety driven. I mean, kids, what we've lived through this past year is like no other year we could have lived through. I had parents call me in spring saying my kids just quit being able to function doing their schoolwork, and they were long-term homeschoolers. And I began to realize that the pattern was their whole lives have changed. These children's lives have changed. They're not at church. They're not at their homeschool co-op. They're not getting to see their grandparents in a lot of situations. This is a time to bring love and joy and peace into the home. That is the most important thing you'll be able to teach right now, is how to handle the difficult situation. It's not about the academics. It is about teaching them to handle that and be able to grow through this, or otherwise we're going to have some really messed up kids, period, all the way around the board. We have got to help these kids see hope again, even in this. So they will follow our lead. If we're all stressed out and afraid, they're going to do that. But if they see us going, we got this, they'll be fine too.
That is so true. Thank you, Miss Margie. And, to your point, there was a point. Did I write it down? There was somewhere I was going to tie in what you just said with the love of learning. I don't know why I can't tie that in, but it's gone. Lisa, just like, I think the truck went down the road and picked up my thought too.
But you're exactly right. I love that you even have that point, the love of learning. Yeah. Because you will even learn through this, even through this, we're learning to deal with adversity. We're learning how to do things a different way, how to meet a challenge and do it differently, and looking at the positive aspects of what have come out. I think Michael was talking about how that, he suddenly brought his kids home, and he's like, oh my gosh, the good part of this, I get to be with my kids. I get to spend more time with them. There are good things. We can focus on what's bad, but we can also find lots of good that's come out of it.
Yes, we can. We most definitely can. Well, we are wrapping up early, which I suspected that would happen. I didn't change the time because that would have been our time that we were live. But if anyone has any questions, please take a moment and put them in the group chat. Yes. A breath of fresh air. I was so stressed out. Let me just have a very personal, transparent moment, trying to see how this event was going to go, and not for sure what that looked like. And then it was just like, you got to do it, because Robin, the last thing that I ever want to hear is that SHAPE canceled anything ever again. That was such a devastating moment for us last year to have canceled graduation, because we were just in the throes of things shutting down. And now, if there is a positive to this pandemic, is that we've been in it for a while. So we have been getting creative. Zoom is alive and well. I wish I had bought stock in it. So now we have an opportunity to, one of the goals this year is to have all the things, even if they look different, but to make sure we have it, because we need it. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Miss Margie. Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Michael, and Robin, and Tara, and Lisa. Guys, thank you so much for speaking today and sharing your truth, and giving us the information to empower us to take the next step, or take the leap, or to come back next year and listen with different ears. I stole that there's nothing I say that's original. I steal everything from Homeschool Moms. One said that, she'll go to different events, but she listens with different ears. I love that. So you guys have a great afternoon. This is recorded, and so I will be loading that. Well, Xavier will be loading it. I'm not loading anything. And we will make sure we get it out to as many people as possible. And if you guys have any questions, you can email, you can contact everyone directly. Feel free to email shapecoordinator@gmail.com if you didn't get that information. And thank you. Does anyone have anything that they want to, any last parting words? Because it definitely doesn't have to be me ending this thing. Who wants to give that last piece of love out there? Come on. Miss Margie, it's probably you.
Well, I think I shared most of it. Is I just want people to enjoy the journey. If you're not having fun, if you're not enjoying it, figure out a different way. Do something else. You know, like Robin said, go to the park. Do something. Anything's better than being miserable. You know, I think one thing I remind parents of a lot is that, especially when you're facing high school, this is your last 4 years. What do you want it to be like? What kind of memories do you want to have when you get to the end? Did you do a lot of things you could take a picture of and that you could plant a memory in their head? You know, we homeschooled for 30 years. We had 6 children. Everybody thought that if anybody was going to have empty nest syndrome, it was me, because my walls had vibrated for, you know, with kids. But I can say I've never had one day of feeling like I had an empty nest, because I have enjoyed watching my eagles leave the nest. I've enjoyed watching them go out and do what they were empowered to do in our homeschool. And that's what's going to make it all worthwhile, is that you have enjoyed the journey. So I don't think that tears have to be a part of the educational process. I know that life will give them tears, and we're going to teach them how to be embodied and emboldened to handle those. You know, make that lemonade out of those lemons life gives them. So my 3 things I always tell people when I got to the end of the journey, and I said, what did I do right? You know, because we can always look what we did wrong, but what did I do right? And I said, we taught them to love to learn and learn how they learned. They had a great work ethic. They all knew how to go out and serve other people. Do you know, Michael, you can show up for college. You can go to college. You can have a 4-point GPA, whatever. But guess what? If you don't show up for class and you don't do your assignments and you don't have a good work ethic, you're not going to make it, are you? You're not going to make it. You've got to have that work ethic. And then also just to go at life with a good attitude. And if we deal with those things, no matter what these children are called to do, they're going to be fine. You're not going to mess it up.
Thank you, Miss Margie. So just remember, everyone, love learning, and the world is our classroom. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you again. And y'all have a great afternoon. Bye.